Hi, welcome back. I'm Sidra Kaluska and this is An Artist's Life. We are starting out in my studio today. I wanted to give a little bit of a wrap up about what our topic is before actually heading outside. Today we're going to talk about potato onions. Is it a potato or is it an onion? A potato onion is a little bit on the unique side. It is kind of old-fashioned. It used to be a much more popular onion. It's very good at storing. It can last for over a year in your basement storage as long as you have a low moisture environment and your temperatures are between the 50 to 60 range. My basement's probably around 65-ish degrees, maybe a little warmer, maybe a little cooler, depending on what the temperatures are like at any given time. But they store really well, and that's one reason that I was interested in growing them. I was looking at something that could store through the winter so I could have more independence as far as my produce goes. We use a lot of onions, but I was interested in being able to keep onions on hand. And I don't know about you guys, but I've experienced problems where my onions start to rot after a period of time. This is just a grocery store onion as a frame of reference. So what I have right here are some of the potato onions that I grew last year. I have it on a braided cord. I braided it myself. This is actually one of my short ones. I had one that's around 3 feet long. So you can see that there's a pretty big size difference. This is a medium small onion right here. So these are definitely much smaller, but they grow very interestingly. So they grow more like garlic. So garlic, if you've never planted garlic before, you break off one clove, you plant it in the ground, and next year during harvest you get a full bud. Potato onions are really similar in that regard. You will plant one bulb, put it in the ground, and you want to make sure that you put the roots on the bottom and the pointy part on top, because if you do it the other way around, it's going to get really confused. It might eventually right itself, but it's not going to be particularly happy about that. So you plant the one bulb, and then when it comes harvest time, instead of having one, you'll have a cluster. So what I like to describe it as is kind of an old-fashioned landmine. It's this bulbous thing. There are multiple points coming off of it, so it'll have one like juncture in the middle where all of the roots are joined, and then it'll have bulbs coming off like that. It'll be kind of this almost spiky looking thing. It's really cool. Sometimes one onion will give you multiple clusters as well as it divides. There are two planting seasons. You can do a fall planting, and when you're doing your fall planting, you want to use some of your bigger bulbs. So like something like that size, grab some of my bigger ones. Because by planting the bigger ones in the fall, it's going to have more time in the ground. It'll have more time to develop and divide. By planting them in the spring, you're really shortening that window by a whole lot. So you actually need to plant your smaller bulbs because that'll be less stress as far as how much it's trying to produce. So I believe it should give you larger onions by starting small, where using the big onions in the fall will give you just a bigger produce in general. I was doing a little bit of reading this morning. Sometimes starting them in the fall can induce them to flower, which is maybe not our highest priority right now. So if it does flower and you want to just work on your bulb developing, you just snip those flowers off and it'll put that energy back into the root production opposed to trying to make seeds. I did my fall planting, and with the fall planting, you want to bury them, I don't know, maybe about 4 to 5 inches below the ground. and then do some mulch on top, because that will help insulate the onions. These are really cold tolerant. However, if you continually get them to a hard freeze, you can kill them. So by laying soil on top and then also mulch, that is additional protection to help insulate the root, to protect its roots as it's developing, to help protect the bulb and get everything to set right. They do like a fair amount of moisture, so you do need to water them over the warmer growing period. During your winter, it probably shouldn't be an issue because you're going to have various types of moisture coming out of the sky, plus since it's cooler, you're going to have a lower evaporation rate. So generally speaking, your soil over the winter does stay fairly moist, which is enough for these guys. You don't want them to be soaking wet, and you don't want them to be in a pot in a spot where it kind of like dips down so water congregates there, because it can start to rot. So they like water, but they like to be well drained. So mine are actually planted on a hill, so when we do get rain, the water will soak into the ground some, but it'll also run off, and it won't sit and congregate around the bulb, which could induce various kinds of mold or rot or infection, or just invite organisms to say like, hey, this looks like something munchy to go at. So I have prepped my garden area that I want to start these in. I'm just working on my spring planting. I went ahead and used a little manual hand tiller. It's just something that you move side to side that helps loosen up the soil. I'm also going to use some pre-measured sticks that help me determine how far I want to put things. Since I'm doing it in a fairly small patch, I am just going to do kind of almost a micro planting. So I'm putting the rows around a foot apart, and then I'm putting my onions about 8 inches apart. If you have the space, you could look at maybe putting them a foot apart each, and then maybe 2 feet between rows, so you can walk in between them easily. But I know I'm pretty much going to be able to let them stay for the most part, and I have small feet, so I know I can scoot in between the rows fairly easily. I'm also going to lay down some lines so I'm able to see where the onions are before they come up. So if I see weeds popping up, I know where I can walk and where I shouldn't walk in order to maneuver through that patch. So I think that's it. So let's get outside and get this started. So keep watching.